President-elect Donald Trump recently hosted an event at Mar-a-Lago alongside Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Senator Marco Rubio, Representative Mike Waltz, and Scott Bessent. But the guests weren't the only controversial aspect of the event. MSNBC host Symone Sanders-Townsend was sickened by Trump's decision to show a documentary on Trump ally and founding director for the Center for Constitutional Jurisprudence, John Eastman. So here to break it down with me is Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and John Eastman himself. So John, thanks for joining the program. Let's start with a little bit of context here. Give us a little bit about the topic of the documentary that you guys had at Mar-a-Lago and what was going on down there.
Well, and first I should let your audience know I had a little minor surgery, so that's why I'm bandaged. I feel a little bit like the fife player in the old Revolutionary War film. This was the title of the documentary is called The Eastman Dilemma: Lawfare or Justice. And I like to point out it's not Eastman's dilemma. I have no dilemma about taking on that representation. The dilemma is for my colleagues in the profession. Are they going to succumb to this lawfare, or are they going to stand with me to fight for justice? We lay out what the illegality in the 2020 election was. We lay out the historical and constitutional basis for my advice on how to deal with that. And then we lay out the lawfare that's been going on against me, against President Trump, against any of the lawyers that were involved in bringing challenges about the 2020 election, and electors and everybody else that was really petitioning our government for redress of grievances as a result of that cheating that occurred in the election. And we think it was important to tell that story. I'm delighted that the Madison Media Group out of Hollywood thought it was a story worth telling and put together, I think, a fabulous film that describes in great detail what was wrong with the 2020 election and you know what's even more a threat to our nation, and that is the lawfare that's resulted from it.
John, let's go into this, because I want to go back to the larger issue here and why you're at Mar-a-Lago in your story. But we have to talk about this MSNBC stuff and these articles that came out, because they were shocked. And, very upset that that this happened at all, that Trump was, hosting a documentary about you, one of his advisors, and they were very upset. Have you followed this? I mean, have you paid attention to this? Because it's pretty wild. Explain it to our audience.
It's wild, and their statements on air are full of demonstrably false claims. One, that I was disbarred. I haven't been disbarred, at least not yet. So that's false, and it's defamatory. That media were barred from going to the event. That's not true. We publicized it. We invited media for weeks leading up to it. And media were there. They were taking pictures. They were interviewing me. We had a media line and a red carpet arrival for all the people, the participants. And media were in the panel discussion and in the film. So again, lie number two, and then they draw a defamatory conclusion from that. So they must know that what they were doing was untoward, because they didn't let anybody see it. I mean, it's just blatantly false. And we'll see whether we're going to take action against them to hold them to account for that. The other thing is, President Trump is not the sponsor of this film or of the event. We rented out the Mar-a-Lago facility just because of the connection. I represented President Trump, but he was on site and he decided on his own to come join us for the event. He was at a dinner having Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, there for dinner, and came down to watch the film with us. And it was wonderful. And the press were all there. They took pictures of it. So it was quite an event. And, he said a few words at the outset, thanking me for my representation of him and pointing out, since Congress changed the law that I was relying on in part for my advice, that they must have acknowledged that I was right, because otherwise they wouldn't have needed to change the law. And it was a great fun event. They were serving popcorn and sodas at the movie, but we had receptions with lovely dinner around the poolside at Mar-a-Lago there. It was a great kickoff for this film. And by the way, anybody else that wasn't able to make it to Mar-a-Lago for the premiere can now watch it. It's available for a limited time only for free at MadisonMediaFund.org. And people can go there and watch it and share it with their friends. We're then going to start a tour around the country, doing a lot of private screenings around the country and those on my website at givesendgo.com/Eastman. So people, if we're in your town and you'd like to come see this and talk to me and hear more detail and get some of the scuttlebutt and the behind the scenes information about the film, you can come to one of those as well.
John, I mean, we've known each other for some time. I mean, I've learned a lot from you. We've been colleague in the seminar programs for Claremont. And I think people should know just how much you've gone through because of your support for President Trump over the last years. The extent of the attack on you and your family is just unbelievable, and it's been inspirational to watch you fight against it. So I want to know personally, I mean, what was it like to be at Mar-a-Lago, to get those comments from Trump and have this documentary be made after all these battles for all these years?
Well, and the battles aren't over yet, unfortunately. I mean, this is a step in the right direction, but unfortunately, the state prosecutors in Georgia and Arizona, for me, and Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada for others, are still going forward. They're doubling down. They are just like blind to the response of the American people to this lawfare and the utter repudiation of it that occurred at the last election. But I was unindicted co-conspirator number 2 in Jack Smith's indictment against President Trump in D.C., indicted co-conspirator number 3 in Georgia, number 13 in Arizona, went through a 10-week bar trial, what one commentator described as the longest and most expensive bar disciplinary proceeding in history. And that's not over either. We've been briefing for the last 8 months the appeal. That'll go to an intermediate appeal court called the Review Department. And then they don't have authority to disbar me either. It has to go to the California Supreme Court for another round of appeal and briefing and oral argument there. The purpose of this is to scare lawyers taking on cases or clients or causes that the left deems unworthy to be represented. And it's a thumb in the nose, a stick in the eye of one of the most cherished aspects of our legal system, that everybody deserves an attorney. I mean, look, for most of our history, the person on the pedestal for this was John Adams, who represented the British soldiers after the Boston Massacre. And he got some heat for that at the time, but we've uniformly recognized what a noble thing he did there. And I guess that doesn't work anymore in modern America when the client is Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, who the left seems to viscerally hate and distort and what have you. So, we get death threats. We get people spiking our driveway, taking out tires. We had protesters down the end of our street for every day for nearly a year. Longtime friends won't talk to us. It's insane. But people ask me if I regret taking that call from the president. And I say, I don't regret it for a minute. I regret what my colleagues in the profession have denigrated themselves to, but I don't regret it. I think our country was on the precipice of losing one of the most cherished things we have, and that is the idea of government by consent, because we give that consent by free and fair elections. And if you don't have the ability to challenge illegality in the election, to speak up against it, First Amendment speech, to petition your government for redress of grievances, First Amendment and other protection, then you don't have the freedoms that we inherited from our forefathers. And for whatever reason, I've been cast into a role on the front lines of this battle to preserve those freedoms for our kids and our grandkids. And I can't think of anything more important to be doing with my career and my experience than protecting our Constitution and our precious freedoms so that they pass on to the next generations.
Well, John, that is very well said. In the time that we have left with you, I want to get your take, because we see that Donald Trump is going to be scheduled to be sentenced for the New York hush money case. It's going to be on January 10th. It's just 10 days before the inauguration. So what do you expect this outcome for the sentencing will be? And do you think that it will affect Trump and his presidency?
Well, all we'll do is, every news account about the election in 2020 always contains an editorial opinion inside the news account. He said X without any evidence, or he said X unsubstantiated. That was their mantra, that there was no evidence. And it's kind of snuck into every single news article. What this sentencing next week is designed to do, this Friday is designed to do, in my view, is so that every article about President Trump for the next 4 years will have a line about it: Trump, the convicted and sentenced felon in the White House. That'll be the mantra that we hear over and over again from the left. And quite frankly, the American people are tired of it. They repudiated it. And the Democrats, I think, proceed down this path at their own peril. I mean, they're starting to look like they're going to go the way of the dodo bird or the Whig Party or the old Federalist Party if they don't understand the reaction to the American people to this kind of utter nonsense. The trial was a sham. The charges were a sham. We don't even know what crime the jury unanimously convicted him of because the judge said they don't need to reach a unanimous verdict on which underlying crime was at stake. The evidentiary rulings were preposterous. This thing will get overturned on appeal, but they will still use that mantra. Well, but for the technicality, he was a convicted felon that's in the White House. That will be every article for the next 4 years.
That's absolutely the goal. Now, John, before we let you go, give us that website one more time where people can check out that film, because I'm sure a lot of people in our audience are going to be very interested in this.
MadisonMediaFund.org, and they can see me on Twitter, and I have it linked there, John Eastman. They can see it at my legal defense fund site, givesendgo.com/Eastman. Anywhere. It's all over the place. It's even in all the front pages of the Italian newspapers. So we made quite an international splash with this.
I love it. It was sickening to MSNBC, which means that we love it. John, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Matthew, you heard him just go through his personal story there of how this has impacted him and everything, but it's just one of the people that have been impacted along the way, and we get to hear his story today.
Yeah, I think what's important is that people watch this documentary because it shows why this is important. That really, like he said, this is a question of whether you have the rule of law in this country and whether you can have, legal defense in the same way, or whether it's all just taken over by lawfare. And as he was saying, this is not over, right? I mean, this guy's in the middle of a battle against people who are ignoring what just happened in the last election. And these battles are fierce. These legal battles are still going on. So it's not just Trump, it's everyone else who was around him. These guys are still being ferociously prosecuted by malicious people. And we have to stand up and support them.